Welcome to today's on-series session titled Leadership in Rehabilitation and Return to Work. The topic and the speaker is brought to you by the Office of Industrial Relations. As a department, we are committed to driving initiatives across the whole scheme that improve safety, well-being and return to work outcomes for both businesses and workers. My name is Dalton Langenhoven. I am Coordinator Education and Engagement Services for the Office of Industrial Relations. I'm pleased to introduce our presenter, Jeremy Clay, who was awarded for his leadership in rehabilitation and return to work at the 2016 Safe Work and Return to Work Awards. Jeremy developed the Injured Worker Pack for the employers in McNab's supply chain, for the injured workers and doctors, all to assist the stakeholders with the return to work process. He's also developed supervisor training, including for subcontractors, a corrective actions report register and a job dictionary. These resources are available to managers, workers, subcontractors and the employers and anyone else in McNab's supply chain. We are extremely pleased to have the opportunity to share Jeremy's innovative approach to rehabilitation and return to work processes with our Queensland stakeholders. I will now hand over to Jeremy to provide an insight into his approach to facilitating positive and sustainable return to work outcomes for his organisation.
Thanks, Dalton. So McNab introduced a really simple system which was employer neutral. So we engaged local medical centres so that they could treat our injuries. We had some roadblocks there, so not all medical centres have all the facilities to treat the injuries that we're encountering on our sites. So for instance, some local medical centres wouldn't take in walk-ins or wouldn't like to see bleeding patients or conduct, say, ECGs if someone had electric shock. So we do have a policy of anyone who does receive an inadvertent shock would go through an ECG. So it's important for the worker to feel comfortable, and sometimes they're not so comfortable if they're sitting in an emergency department waiting for a test, and it may increase their already fragile sort of state. So by getting local medical centres that understand WorkCover system, they have the treatment facilities available, and they do accept walk-ins, and you don't need to make an appointment. It's very important. So especially if you've got a long-term project, if you're a manufacturing business, it would be very smart to get something very close to your manufacturing business, for instance. So we developed the systems aimed at different audiences. So for the worker, so they've got the information they need at hand. They've got a copy of everything that we give to the doctor, for instance, and everything that we give to the supervisor as well. We developed some information for the supervisors to assist them to help the worker on their journey. And not all supervisors have received the rehabilitation coordinator training. So it's a simple system where they can go through a checklist and say, have I done this? What's the next thing I do? Have I got all the paperwork I need, especially for the WorkCover claim? And also explaining some of the intricacies of the insurance to the workers as well, and explain the claims process, and also overcoming simple roadblocks. We also developed a job dictionary. So we spoke to a lot of experienced guys in workplace rehab, especially in the construction sector. We analysed what the jobs were, how people sort of use their bodies in different ways to find out in a clinical sort of way how much time they spend on different tasks, different weights, for instance, different body mechanics, so we can focus on what people can do rather than what they can't do. So if they've injured a hand, for instance, is there there's another aspect of their role that they can undertake. And then we developed a simple training package for supervisors. So sometimes supervisors need to know what's in it for them. So we provided what's in it for them, provided some information about McNab's success in our injury management, the savings that we've generated and so forth, and so that they can get an understanding why they have to stop work and assist their worker who may have an injury. So we learned a few lessons on the way. So first up is planning for the worst and hoping for the best. So engaging good quality medical centres that do provide good occupational treatment and good communication. So we did have a situation where on 3 separate occasions we had three of our workers who suffered broken limbs and they were misdiagnosed as soft tissue injuries. And that might have been for the remote location of the project and the fact that there wasn't an X-ray close by, but it did show a pattern, and we subsequently changed medical centres to someone who could provide a bit better clinical support. Also, some local centres would prefer to use Medicare and may not really know that the ins and outs of workers' compensation. And provide things like the first medical certificate, which is different to one that you'd go in for a general medical condition rather than an occupational one. And we treat all workers as if they're our own. So there may be some situations where we're finding that subcontractors, employees may be subcontracted themselves. So instead of investigating who's responsible, it's the main thing is to get people the treatment they need and work out who's responsible afterwards for the ongoing treatment and care and so forth. But the initial thing is, if someone needs treatment, they need treatment. They don't need to know who their employer is immediately. And we also focus on what people can do, not what they can't do. And sometimes some outcomes, people think they're doing the right things by limiting people's work, but sometimes it can mask some other issues and also contribute to secondary illnesses, especially mental well-being. If you find people who get back to their peer support network actively engage in the workforce again, and they get better quicker. So, there's a lot of research around saying good work is very good for you. So we find that people who return to work immediately, we have a greater success for their long-term employment. So the Australian College of Physicians say that people who are off work for an extended period of times may never get back to work. And also, workers who are too injured to work are normally too injured to drive. So there really needs to be a plan for how that worker is going to get home from their medical treatment. So if they go there by an ambulance because they're suffering acute pain, they receive some pain medication and some other treatment, they might be ready to go home, but they still need to get home. So make sure that you plan that return journey. So we make it a policy that all injured workers are accompanied to the first medical appointment. Also, write it down is consider engaging a professional to help you detail the job dictionary. So we developed a job dictionary just in-house in the first instance, and then we sought some professional help in detailing that in a more clinical way from an occupational physician. So that's something that people can do. They can go and Google that and find out someone who's local to them. It helps in having a goal. What a good someone who is fully able, what they can do. So it creates this target. You can say, well, this is what you need to do to fulfil your role, and this is where we're going to rehabilitate you up to. So that's good to find that in a more clinical way, so the doctors can read that understanding and then suit their rehabilitation. Any allied health can use that as well, and it also helps with the supervisor, to understand what they need to make sure that this worker can actually be supported in their return to work. And education is extremely important. So educating on your supply chain that no one benefits from an injury, and that there are so many benefits from just a small investment into rehabilitation, return to work. Is having no plan in the first instance is not a plan for success. So if you can seek advice from a qualified return to work coordinator. If you've got one in your supply chain, you can always leverage off them. They're usually very helpful for anyone who's involved in their supply chain. And not all businesses require them, so it's for high-risk businesses. It's about it's a large turnover, about $3.5 million, but that changes on a regular basis according to the legislation. So we've seen a dramatic reduction in premiums, and it's far outweighs any cost of our program. So when we first initiated our program from just a standard return to work program that anyone could get off the shelf, and actively participated into the supply chain, we saw a reduction in our own premiums. So from the industry rate, which it was in 2011, to this year, it's going to be 1/5 of the industry rate. So we're saving a dramatic amount of money. So it's our 5-year return on investment, $1.5 million. So it's a significant amount of money that we can invest elsewhere in the business. And the amount of money that went into training and other things is far outweighed by the return on that better insurance rate. And so in future is we're attempting to engage our supply chain as early as possible. Explain the benefits of good rehabilitation practices, and sharing our job dictionary, among other things, and giving them advice when they need it. Assisting their workers to good medical treatment is of benefit for our entire supply chain. Reiterating that no one benefits when their workers are injured. Absolutely no one benefits. And encouraging pre-employment assessment. So if you use your job dictionary, you can really focus on getting your ergonomic fit right with your workers. So if workers who shouldn't be doing that physical exertion as high as other people, you can limit your exposure to workplace injuries in the first place if you employ right, and also select your good subcontractors as well. And look, to encourage others, I'd say plan for injuries. Plan for the worst, but hope for the best. Is find good quality doctors that are in close proximity to where you're working. Make sure that they can actually do the treatment that is usually necessary from the injuries that you've had in the past. So that they accept walk-ins, that they know the workers' comp system, that they've got details of your injury management system, so they can assist you with that rehabilitation, and they provide good care. So if you notice there's a pattern that's not befitting the way you want your outcomes to be, it's always good to take that up with your practice manager.
Jeremy, just following up from this point that you've just made, for people new to rehabilitation and return to work, can you give some practical advice about how they would approach a medical centre to establish this relationship?
Dalton, I would encourage the return to work coordinator to go to a local medical centre near where their area is operating. So we are in the construction industry, so it would be close to our construction site. But if you're a manufacturing industry, it'd be close to where you manufacture. If you're a delivery company, you could even get some chains that they do have a few medical doctors. There's one of them, for instance, is Sonic Healthcare. If you Google them, you can get some more information from there. it's also important to engage with the practice manager, because sometimes good rehabilitation is just down to the administration, and having a really good relationship with the practice manager, things like information from the visit, like the medical certificate and other information, it makes life easier if there's a good relationship there. And just little things like having a look at what facilities they've got available. So have a chat to the practice manager, and if you do get to chat with a doctor, and explain what your work is, what your past medical treatment injuries have been like, and what you need services of generally can help as well. And look at the results from previous workplace injuries. If they've been successful, then analyse how that's been successful, and if they've been less successful, you could take that information back to the medical centre and explain the outcome wasn't what you expected, and suggestions for improvement. So it also I encourage people to write down what their preferred medical centre is, and explain that to people when they start with your organisation. If it's a construction site, during their site induction, if it's a manufacturing environment or other environment, just explain when they first start is if they do have a workplace injury, is that they're welcome to use your preferred doctor, and that there's a good there's usually a good relationship between your preferred doctor. Some doctors will actually come out to your work site and do some analysis of your job tasks and so forth, and it's usually at a fee. But sometimes you can recover those fees through better rehabilitation practices. So yeah, so I would encourage people to do that. Going back to the encouragement, I think the other aspect that you should really focus on is doing an incident investigation, and considering that all injuries should be prevented. The best way to have a good outcome with workplace injuries is not to have injuries in the first instance. So really learn from your investigation. Don't immediately point to an issue with a person. Have a look at the complete system. It may surprise you what the contributing factors and the root cause are. So, and also engaging with other people. Workplace health and safety do run very good networks, like join the Facebook group, etc.
Thank you, Jeremy, for sharing your experience and the success you have achieved with your rehab and return to work initiatives. You can also view Jeremy's video on the Queensland Safe Work and Return to Work Awards website. We will be providing a link to that website and that video with this recording. The Office of Industrial Relations is committed to sharing knowledge and experiences that encourage others to consider what innovations they can bring to the rehabilitation and return to work processes within their workplaces. To that end, I think today's session is incredibly valuable. We hope you found this information valuable for your role within your business, and we look forward to delivering more real-life experiences for you in the future. Thank you.